Welcome to Lynn's Warriors, where we confront the truths many others avoid and stand up for the protection of children everywhere. April is National Child Abuse Prevention Month, and we're taking a hard look at a subject many refuse to connect but cannot be ignored: the role of pornography in shaping behavior, fueling exploitation, and influencing how young people understand relationships and even consent. This is not abstract, this is happening in real time, often on the same devices our children are using every single day. Joining us is an expert and a dear colleague, Haley McNamara, Executive Director and Chief Strategy Officer at the National Center on Sexual Exploitation in Washington, D.C. And she's a leading voice in this subject and so many others, the voice on the intersection of online content and child safety. Together, we're asking questions that matter. What are kids exposed to today? How early does it start? And what are the long-term consequences when harmful content becomes normalized? The conversation is about awareness, accountability, and always taking action. The website, everyone, is endsexualexploitation.org. You can also hear Haley on the great podcast, Ending Sexploitation. I will have all of that info for our warriors in the body of the video, but let's get to it. So welcome, Haley McNamara, back, I'll say, back to the Warriors.
Oh, thanks so much for having me. It's always great.
I mean, absolutely. I love to share your voice. You're always so on point with everything. We're learning so much about this topic, this subject. And we know, Haley, it's hard to talk about, right? People get uncomfortable, but we want people uncomfortable because it has become, in my opinion, very normalized, all of this behavior. Therefore, we have to spread the reality and talk about what parents and caregivers and families can do. So we know that a lot of research today shows that kids are exposed to pornography by the age of 13, right?
Mm-hmm.
Talk to us about how this exposure shapes behaviors before kids. This is very concerning. Before kids even understand what sex and sexual content and all of this, what it even means. How does it affect them?
It is so significant. Like you said, some people are uncomfortable, but we need to be talking about these issues. That number, by the age of 13, more than half of children have seen pornography, and that's alarming. And it has really significant impacts. Obviously, so many of these children are being exposed before they've had a first kiss, maybe before they even really understand what sex is. And so pornography then turns out to be, for most kids, their early sexual
Yeah.
education. And even if you do discuss different sexual issues with your child, they are hearing from the world and from pornography so much more than maybe a one-time lesson in school, or one awkward conversation on the couch with their parent. And so there are so many ways that pornography is being linked with child sexual abuse. Specifically, it has many other harms. It has negative impacts on mental health, on communication with partners, on even the brain, on learning and being engaged with at school. But pornography is also connected to child sexual abuse, and like you mentioned, it's Child Sexual Abuse Awareness Month, in several ways. So one of those ways is that kids do learn by watching, and there's a term that researchers have used for this called social modeling, and it essentially argues that exposure to pornography provides this pathway to learn about abusive behaviors, that many children act out sexually what they have seen. They're just trying to copy what they have seen. And there's so many practitioners, therapists even, who are speaking out about this, sharing stories about ways that kids will copy what they have seen, and then that actually is sexual abuse often to another child. So that's one way that is connected to child sexual abuse.
I mean, this is such a loaded sort of conversation, Haley. I think there's so many
Mhm.
different things, tentacles to all of this. I'm glad you brought up about the social modeling. I wanted to ask you about that because the pornography today, let's just jump in, Haley. Whenever I say something, is very violent.
Yes.
What kids are witnessing, what everybody, but we're focused on the kids right now. We're a family show, but violent topics and such horrific abuse. I dare say it's not just a child seeing like two people having sex. They're seeing this
Right.
horrible violence, which you pointed out, then they act out, right? And that's something we don't talk a lot about, acting out on siblings, friends of theirs. Um, What can you give us some how serious is this? Do we know? Because I feel like I'm reading a little bit more about it. I'm hearing a little bit more about it. Um, this child on child harmful
Mhm.
behavior, but I still dare say it's still kind of hidden and whispered about. So, can you give us a little bit more, maybe facts or thoughts on this? Because again, I know it's uncomfortable. People don't like talking about it, but it's happening. So we have
It
to talk
is.
about it and give out some warning signs about this.
Yeah, it's a dramatically underreported crime. It's a crime, there's sexual
Mhm.
abuse is happening, but you can understand why it's often so underreported. It's because very often family members or friends love two children who are involved. The child who perpetrated, who acted out in a harmful sexual way, that could be a cousin, it could be a friend, it could be even another sibling, someone that people love, and people get scared about this because they don't want to put that child in jail or have that child be further traumatized. So it's not reported well enough, but we know that it's a rising issue, and it very much is linked to pornography, which is why just anything that parents can do to delay children's exposure to this as much as possible, or to talk about it, what they're seeing, so that they aren't in their room alone and assuming that what they're seeing is real, how people are supposed to act, or just because it feels good doesn't mean that it's a healthy, or consensual activity. So I would especially tell parents to go to our website, because there are resources both for children who have obviously been impacted by sexual abuse from another child, but also for the child who had that harmful sexual behavior. There are programs, there's advice out there. You're not alone if this has happened in your family. And that's on our resources page on our website.
Yeah, I like, Haley, that you said, you're not alone. That is
Mhm.
something at the Warriors we constantly point out. Uh, Nobody is, isolated in any of these incidents. And even though it is hard, and children involved, we love, right, and things like that, we have to seek help for these children
Yeah.
because they'll just grow up, repeat, or be traumatized, as we both know, from survivors we work with, and, for the rest of their lives. So it has to be dealt with. And talked about more in the public and also in the media. I also was, we talk about grooming a lot. Uh, Adults are doing this. Adults are doing it to children. We're not talking about, which really made me sit up when I was looking at some notes this morning, now children, because they're learning. Because all the kids today have phones and laptops pretty much, and Chromebooks and tablets. So again, they're being deluged, right? Algorithms
Mm.
with all of this material. Let's point out they're not even really perhaps even looking for pornography, but somehow, some way it gets to them, or a friend shows it to them, or the algorithm again feeds it to them. But now we're hearing about this grooming process. The kids are learning it themselves at young ages. I was reading about a 9-year old, which is horrific. I can barely even say it. Uh, Grooming two younger children.
Wow.
What have you heard about any of this? Again, we know everybody, it's hard to hear about these things. We don't even like talking about it, but we have to, because you have to know what's going on, because we know your children are exposed to devices. So,
Mhm.
what do you think, Haley?
Yeah, it's kind of happening on two different levels. One is on a social level. Pornography is grooming children, I would even argue all of us, to these themes of abuse, that which we talked about, that most mainstream pornography that is on these tube sites is not just two people having sex, it's very abusive, very violent themes, or themes around adults and children, step siblings. Again, I won't go into detail, but very abusive themes, racist themes as well.
Yes.
So there is this kind of meta grooming that's happening to children, where they might be exposed to this, and then they are just immediately more likely to be susceptible to an adult who tries to groom them, or even another child. And so there's the social level, and then there's the level of an individual perpetrator. It is so much easier for them to desensitize a child to what sex is, that adults can have this with children. This is how you should act. I mean, victims of and survivors of sex trafficking have talked about this as well, of sex buyers sometimes showing them pornography,
Yes.
telling them to copy it and act it out. Then it also takes away and degrades at almost children's or any person's feelings of boundaries around
Mhm.
sexuality. So one example is a caseworker was talking about a young girl who was a schoolgirl, young schoolgirl, and was strangled by a boy her age. And the girl told the therapist, "Well, I think that he was just trying to be sexy." What does that mean? Where did she get the context that being choked is sexual and is a positive thing? She got that from being exposed to pornography, and therefore her own boundaries of the kind of behavior that she was willing to accept were shifted because of that content that she was exposed to. And the pop singer Billie Eilish actually spoke about this as well, that as a young girl she consumed violent pornography and that she really regretted it because she said it made her accept and tolerate behavior that, looking back, from partners she shouldn't have tolerated.
Haley, I'm glad you brought that up. We work with a lot of healthcare across the United States, and they'll report to me that so many kids as young as 10 girls are showing up with strangulation marks
Oh,
on their necks. And this has been going on the last couple of years. And this is from across the whole country, right? Different places, different states. Because the girls accept, they think this is the form of love and being, as you said, like sexy. Because
mhm.
and we can't even blame the kids, I
No.
think, because this is
Yeah.
what's being fed to the boys. This is how you treat a girl, right? And I'm not even talking now, Haley, about like 16, 17-year-olds. We're talking now, when I pointed out before, 9, then we have 10, 11, very young ages are consuming all of this, and then acting it out.
Yeah.
So that also fuels, also, let's talk about sextortion, because
Mhm.
sextortion to me, Haley, I have so many parents I work with, and they always tell me the same story, even if they don't know each other, the parents. If my child just told me
Yeah.
instead of harming themselves. So, how, I guess this is fueling the predators, all this pornography, desensitizing, the kids. But then let's get into sextortion a little bit. What are
Mhm.
you hearing about that? Because I feel like it's escalating as opposed to, dropping off a little bit. I keep hearing about it every day.
Yeah, I do believe that sextortion is a rising issue,
Yeah.
and only more and more. And pornography leads into this in many obvious ways as well. Going even back to that grooming, the idea of sending and receiving pornography from strangers is normalized to children who are exposed to this. So an adult sending them something or requesting it, maybe the child doesn't even realize that what they're either creating or receiving as child sexual abuse material, which is, of course, a different legal category. But in either case, that trading of sexually explicit or suggestive material, perpetrators can then threaten to expose that the child has sent that material. And whether they'll say they'll send it to their friend or their youth pastor or their coach. And that is a way that these extortionists gain and maintain power. And so they'll often use that either to coerce a child to send more child sexual abuse material, or they might even request for financially motivated, they might request money or gift cards, what have you. But it is so hard for parents because these are extortionists. They're criminals who do this to probably hundreds of kids a week, right? They're not only focused on one person typically, and they are very skilled and adept at creating a high pressure situation in a short amount of time. So the child feels out of control, they feel isolated, they feel shame often, and like there's no real options. And that's intentional. The criminal wants them to feel like there are no options so that they keep complying. And very tragically, for some people, that leads to issues like self-harm. And so it's a very, very serious issue. It's one that I think every parent needs to be talking about with their child regularly. Use the fact that you've even heard this interview as an excuse to say you were listening and you heard about this. Do you ever know someone who's experienced this? Have you ever had someone ask you for pictures online, or do you know Do you know in person everyone that you're talking to online? Just use it as an excuse to start the conversation. And very specifically, let your child know that if they ever are in the situation, that you're a safe place for them to come, that they won't be judged for any decisions that they made that led to that point, and that there are answers. You know, the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children has the Take It Down website, which, especially for minors, they can help remove a good amount of materials that are posted even online. So if your child is fearful of that, let them know there are some steps that can be taken to mitigate the problem. And so hopefully by having those conversations in advance, if your child's ever in that situation, they can be aware that it's not a life or death issue, and there is a safe place for them to come, and there is a safe place for them to get help.
Yeah, and also, I remind everybody to report to, your local authorities and also your local FBI office. These are
Yeah.
crimes against children. Um, and Haley, you also pointed out, it sounds a little crass, but I'll say it, working with law enforcement, these people, this is what they do. They sit and do this, 18, 20 hours, maybe a day, and they're just on to the next. So if you immediately, and this is what we have to keep telling the kids, you ignore them and block.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, they're on to the next one. And that doesn't sound very, very nice, but no engagement at all, because even when a child might pay them, a teen might send them money, it's never going to stop.
Yeah.
So you block and ignore, okay, and then go to your trusted adult. Because I've had too many, Haley, stories where we had dinner and then 3 hours later, my child was no longer alive.
Oh, awful.
I had just the other one, a family I'm working with. My child was trading Bible verses before bed, and a few hours later, and we don't know what transpired until we were able to get into the phone later on.
Yeah.
And as you pointed out, very quickly they do this. They put the pressure on the brains. They confuse the kids. They really, our kids have to speak up and come forward. They're not going to get in trouble. Parents have to say, we're going to deal with this. It's a crime. So we want to make sure everybody knows, because I've had parents, Haley, say to me, oh, but if I have that image on the phone, I'm going to get in trouble. No, you need documentation. You're not going to get in trouble if you have some sort of image. You're going to go to your local authorities, your local FBI, cybertipline.org, which is the National Center on Missing and Exploited Children. You're going to report this. They'll take it off your hands and they will investigate. But kids have to know, ignore and block. Okay, so that's that. Let's talk a little bit about technology, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now we're sitting on top of AI. Well, we're in it, artificial intelligence. Haley, have we learned nothing from, basically 30 years of social media and the harms caused? You at the center, what's the talk? What's kind of the vibe around AI now? What you're working on, what you want parents and everybody to know about all of this?
Yeah, one of the biggest things is that we don't want to make this mistake that we made with social media, like you said, years ago with Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act, and this broad immunity that was given incorrectly, I think, by the courts in their interpretation of that law, for these companies to not be held liable. And it's very few cases that are ever able to get beyond that. So we don't want that to happen with AI. We need to try to push for regulation that is, of course, common sense. Of course, we want innovation and discovery, but we also want safety. And I think I often think about it as, I don't want to cap the ceiling of emerging technology. I just want to cap the floor. I want to cap how low it can go for sexually exploitative purposes. So some key things there are, there's a couple of really good bills like the AI Guard Act, which we support. And there's a lot of state bills coming forward as well. One of our core goals is we cannot allow this kind of moratorium on states' rights to pass legislation to protect their own constituents. That's something that it keeps cropping up. I think obviously the AI tech lobby really wants to get rid of state legislation on this issue. So that's something that we're really focused on right now, is preserving states' rights to protect their own people from AI, and especially things like AI's sexual deepfakes or AI chatbots that are sexually abusing kids.
Helly, do you ever sit back and say to yourself, wow, look what we have to talk about?
Yeah.
Like, seriously, we're talking about children.
Mhm.
Did you ever
And
take
how
a step?
common sense. I think
No,
that's
like just
sometimes.
like nobody wants this,
Yeah.
in my opinion, except maybe big tech,
Yeah.
because they're making a lot of money. That's the bottom line. When people say, why? They make a lot of money, they have nobody's holding them accountable. So that's what they do. But
Mhm.
isn't it crazy that, um, you're a young mom with children. I'm a mom and a grandma now. And it's like, wow, this is what we have to talk about when our energies could be
Yeah.
put into. And again, I like you pointed out, because we at the Warriors, along with the center, we're pro innovation, we're
Mhm.
pro technology, ethical technology. We know a lot, both of us, very ethical technologists that do good work.
Mhm.
We just want children protected. We want I want to say, I don't want to speak for you, Haley. Like, the bottom line is, we don't want government like all in our business and all that, but I think it's a
Right.
little too late. We have to do something, because big tech has not stepped up to do anything until they're held responsible. But at least we had the two court cases recently
Yes.
where now that was groundbreaking in New Mexico and California. So hopefully that will be the impetus setting off all these other cases we have. I know the law center's working on things, as we're talking right here. What do you think? Uh, do you think? Why do you think? I have like 50 questions for you. Let me try to get organized
I
here.
know there's too many things.
No, because one sparks the other. And I'm very serious when I say this. Like, why would big tech just not step up? Yes, they do on their platforms have some guardrails, and they do put out very glossy PR statements, usually when they're going to be dragged into court or if something's breaking. Um, why do you think they just don't do more work
Mhm.
just to clean it up a little bit more? What's your opinion about that? Because it really could be so much easier if they just worked with everybody, right?
Exactly, and that's something that we do try to engage them, in good faith. We are meeting regularly with big tech,
Right,
imploring them to just do a couple of common sense things that would
right,
maybe help reduce child sexual exploitation online. Like, one example is on our Dirty Dozen list this year. Snapchat is on there. It's no surprise that Snapchat is on there. Talk about sextortion. Talk about children being exposed to pornography. Snapchat is a prime place for all of those crimes. So much of that would decrease if only Snapchat would block the ability for people to send sexually explicit material over their platform, because that would get rid of probably 90% of this problem on their platform. But they won't do it. And the reason why, so far, they haven't done it so far. I still am holding out hope, but
yeah,
it's engagement. I think at the end of the day, these companies, it's about money, and money is about engagement. And so they want to not have very strict age verification, because they don't really want to know who is under the age of 13 there, or to keep kids, out of being able to have comments or being able to spend money or be able to be advertised to. And also engagement of, unfortunately, I mean, talk about, this is crass, but it's engagement on their platform when adults are sending direct messages to kids, or when adults are commenting on the photos of a child in order to initiate grooming. All of that goes into their metrics that result in being able to sell more ads and being able to line their own pocketbook. And I just think that the cost of child sexual exploitation isn't high enough yet that it outweighs the profits that they're making. And so we need to make that cost higher. And whether that's through just convincing them and maybe their own consciences
mm,
being stricken and being willing to change what their mechanism of decision making is on this, or actually the cost, whether that's through a Supreme Court case, um, redefining Section 230, Congress sunsetting it, or some of these breakthrough lawsuits setting new precedents where they could be held liable in a court of law by survivors. We just have to make child safety more important to them than the money that they're making at the moment.
yeah. And the good news is, in my opinion, Haley, is especially in the last year, more of the public knows about these things. There
Mhm.
is more media covering these things. We do have, parent groups across the country stepping up, stepping in, educating each other, kind of like an underground movement.
Mhm.
Even the pencil to paper movement that's sweeping the country to get kids off the Chromebooks in classrooms.
Yes.
Just to look, we live in a digital world. We're not getting rid of devices. We don't want to do it. You and me are talking right now, right? But we can decrease the usage, among
Mhm.
kids and delay it a little bit and be smart about it. And as you said, use common sense about all of this. So I feel very hopeful right now that there is an awakening for all of
Yeah.
this, that we did even have, the anxious generation, right? By Dr. Haidt, that kind of broke through a lot, waking a lot of people up. I think it's still on the bestseller list going into maybe its third year. I don't even know. But at least we have studies now. We have the court cases. What do you want to tell? Well, before I ask you this question, let's review quickly because I can never get enough of the Dirty Dozen list because I like to say, let's get dirty. Your annual campaign started in 2013, 12 entities, this year a person.
Mhm.
Explain how simple it is for the public to take action on that.
It's so simple. All you have to do is go to dirtydozenlist.org, and we have these 12 companies, or well, 11 companies and one person, and you can click take action
Yeah.
on all of them. I actually took action on all 12 in less than 4 minutes. It's really fast. We
Oh, it
have
took me 5 minutes.
well, you maybe did a bit more due diligence than me. I knew what it all said. You read it, maybe
That's
5 minutes, and you can send these emails and messages straight to the companies, and it makes a difference
right.
because they do sometimes respond to consumer demand, and it does raise the flag on their safety team. We've actually had some safety teams at these companies tell us that while they don't want to be on the Dirty Dozen list, it can also help their safety team to just bump up on the priority list of all of the different things that are needed by the leadership of the company. They'll look at this and realize they need to take some action. So please do go to dirtydozenlist.org. You can take action. Your voice does make a difference. Every year we do have victories from the Dirty Dozen
Yes.
list. Some companies have already reached out to us because they're not happy about being put on the list. So by you taking action, it helps bring them to the table.
Yeah. I mean, our warriors have to know, numbers matter. And because this list, which I promote all the time, and I'll have it in the body of the video here for everybody to click on, it's all done for you. The work is all done. You're just checking the box and adding your name or zip code, whatever's there, and you send it off. The National Center has done all the work, the research, what needs to be done. And frankly, you know what, Haley? It's almost like for these companies, free focus group, like where they're
Mhm.
I just thought of that, where they're lacking, where they could pick up the slack a little bit. And Mark Zuckerberg is on it, a person this year. So we all have to keep up on hammering away on that and all participating, taking action. I want to finish up, Haley, with if silence around these topics, it just allows the predators, to get away with these crimes against our kids.
Mhm.
What do you want to tell right now to parents or educators, policymakers? What should they do right now differently? Because everybody seems to be not knowing things or not knowing what to do with information. How can we bring it together? I work with a lot of teachers also that are very confused about AI, parents who don't know about it, kids who are already using it. What do you want to say to them as the expert you are, Haley, about all
Mm.
of this?
I think, conversation in the home is always an important place to start.
Mhm.
Of course, putting on parental controls, being aware of what platforms are your kids using, and talk to them about it. Ask why they like it. What do they like about it? What do they not? Have they ever had something weird happen? You can just have those conversations. Don't assume that they're whatever they're on because it's maybe a mainstream company or a logo that you're familiar with means that it's a safe place for them. I do think
Yeah.
dirtydozenlist.org is a helpful place to go to learn about those things. But then again, I think calling on your representatives to sunset Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act is something that if you're just contact your senator's office and ask them, if they aren't yet, ask them to sponsor this, to co-sponsor this, to push it forward, because we need to pass that law, ultimately to have the companies have the incentive to actually take child sexual abuse more seriously.
Yeah, and I'll have that in the body also. Senate.gov, House.gov, find out who everybody your representatives are. They work for us, and push on them, because last year's Dirty Dozen list was one thing, which was Section 230, which I've
Mhm.
always maintained until we do something with that, we're not going to have a lot of progress in other areas. And this year, looking to sunset it. Or I like to
Mhm.
say, Ellie, kick it to the curb. I know that's
Yeah.
not Washington talk, but that's New
It's
York
not
City
as
talk.
catchy, but I like it more.
Just kick it to the curb. That's what we say in New York. So that's good news. I feel like this pressure building. I do think there will be some sort of action on this.
Mhm.
Um, and give us some final thoughts. Anything you want to add?
Just go to
Yeah.
dirtydozenlist.org, and I think be bold and have these conversations. We started this by saying, these are topics that might be uncomfortable, but when all of us are raising our voice, it does make a difference.
Yes. And again, April is National, Child Abuse, Prevention Awareness Month, whatever you want to call it. And the screens are now the abusers. So
Mhm.
we have to talk about all these issues and put them out in the public. Well, I want to say to you, Haley, thank you for your courage, your continued work, your advocacy. I know, we have deep gratitude. We at the Warriors love you at the center and use all of your studies. You've got a great blog. You've got the podcast now, and you're at the front line. You are really leaders in this movement in Washington, D.C. and across our great country. So thank you. Promise me you'll come back again. We have so many
Of
issues to
course.
speak of, and we'll just keep talking about these issues. Thank you, Haley.
Thank you so much.